Good evening. Tonight we will talk to you about how to notarize public documents abroad through the Philippine Consulate Office and the United States attorneys.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, let's try to discuss about what is the Philippine Consulate Office. So, the Philippine Embassy is an extension of the Philippine territory. So, even though embassies and consulates are located in another country, they are legally considered territory of the country they represent. So, the consulate performs its notarial and legalization services in the context of the 1963 Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. So the functions of the Philippine Consulate Office is that it serves the needs of the Filipino community abroad through the following services. We have assistance to distressed Filipinos, economic diplomacy, issuance of passports and visas, civil registration, notarials, and other legal services, and the promotion of the Philippine culture. Among these services that the consulate office provides are the following. So we have passport, the issuance of passports, travel documents, and visas, notarization or consularization, the authentication or acknowledgement of documents such as special power of attorney, deeds, school and medical records, trademarks, oaths, and appointments, and civil registry. So civil registration of birth, marriages, and death of Filipino nationals. And dual citizenship or RA 9225. So for the processing of applications for dual citizenship. So you'll know now that a document may be notarized abroad. A consular official may perform the function of a notary public, being one of its consular services. The consulate, through its consular officers, can notarize documents signed by individuals that will be used or presented in the Philippines. So we have here an example. So Mario is an overseas Filipino worker and he wants to sell his parcel of land in the Philippines through his agent, Anna. So Anna, as Mario's agent, must be authorized by a special power of attorney before she can sell the land. What are the requirements? Number one, personal appearance of the persons executing the document. So Mario must personally appear at the consulate office as the person executing the document. Number two, document to be acknowledged, such as the special power of attorney. So there must be two unsigned copies. So the applicant will sign in the presence of the consular officer. And the document must also have the signatures of the witnesses. Take note that personal appearance of the witnesses is not required. Number three, passports of signatory. Original and two photocopies of data page. So this is the page showing photo and complete name and page with signature. Number four, passports or government issued ID of witnesses, if necessary in the document. So there must be two photocopies of data page showing photo and complete name, and page with signature. Number 5, payment of fees. This is to be paid by the applicant at the consulate. Number 6, self-addressed or self-stamped envelope or printout of airway bill from courier if choosing to have the acknowledged contract mailed when ready. The applicant will sign the document in the presence of a Philippine consular officer who will make an acknowledgement of the said document. Processing time for all documents is 3 working days upon receipt of complete documents and payment. And presentation of the official receipt issued by the embassy is required if claiming your document in person at the consulate office.
So, what is the state attorney general? According to the United States government and its website www.usa.gov, attorneys general are the top legal officers of their state or their territory. They advise and represent their legislature and state agencies and act as the people's lawyer for the citizens. And most of them are elected, though a few are appointed by the governor. And in order for you to select who is your state attorney general, you could go to usa.gov on its website and select the state where you belong. The state attorney general in each of the 50 U.S. states of the federal district or any of the territories is the chief legal advisor to the state government and the state's chief law enforcement officer. In some states, though, the Attorney General serves as the head of state or Department of Justice, with responsibilities similar to those of the United States Department of Justice. The State Attorney General actually belongs or is part of those designated competent authorities by the Hague Conference on Private International Law. So what does this mean? In the United States of America, there is what you call a list of those designated competent authority. So, for example, in the case of issuing an apostille certificate, the U.S. Department of State Authentication Office affixes the apostilles to the documents issued by federal agencies of the United States. The United States Department of State, the Office of the Consular Affairs, the Passport Services, the Vital Records Section, they also affix apostilles to the consular reports of birth, death, and marriage or U.S. citizens and government. The clerk and deputy clerks of the United States of America are authorized to issue apostilles on documents issued by those courts. And as an alternative, the U.S. Department of Justice may authenticate the U.S. Department of State's Authentications Office for an apostille on that seal. Public documents also issued by the United States, the District of Columbia, and other U.S. jurisdictions may be legalized with an apostille by designated authorities in any jurisdiction, generally the State Secretary of State's Office. Other Philippine Consulate General websites, such as this one from Houston, Texas, also states that for legalization services such as acknowledgement, authentication, and certification, any legal document issued in the U.S. must be apostillized by the issuing state or competent authority to give it legal effect for use in the foreign countries. So, as in this case, if you're a Filipino or an OFW living in the United States and you wanted your document authenticated, you go to a competent state authority, and that is the State Attorney General. Then, these documents with the apostille certificate no longer needs additional authentication by the Philippine Consulate General. So that is the reason or the purpose for the apostille convention. As Filipinos, whether living here in the Philippines or abroad, you go check out the Department of Foreign Affairs website, and on it you will see the advisory that the Apostille Convention on Authentication of Documents has already taken effect last May 14, 2019. Similarly, in the Department of Foreign Affairs website with this advisory, It states that the Office of Consular Affairs wishes to inform the public that it will no longer issue authentication certificates starting May 14, 2019. Instead, the DFA will affix an apostille to documents for use abroad as proof of authentication for use in apostille contracting parties. After authentication by the DFA, there is no more need for authentication or legalization by the concerned foreign embassies or consulates general if the country or territory of destination of the authenticated document is already a member of the Apostille Convention. Public documents executed in apostille contracting countries and territories, except for Austria, Finland, Germany, and Greece, to be used in the Philippines no longer have to be authenticated by the Philippine Embassy or Consulate General once apostillized. So this is the purpose for having the State Attorney General as one of the competent authorities to apostillate your documents in the U.S. Furthermore, the Department of Foreign Affairs advisory states, however, in countries and territories which are not apostille contracting parties, the previous process of authentication applies. Documents will still have to be authenticated by the Philippine Embassy or Consulate General before they can be used in the Philippines. Also, there is still a need for authentication or legalization by the concerned foreign embassies or consulates general if the country of destination of the authenticated document is not yet a member of the Apostille Convention. Authentication fees will remain at 100 pesos for regular processing and 200 pesos for expedited processing per document. So again, since the Philippines and the United States of America, they are both signatories to the Apostille Convention, apostillating documents in order to have legal effect in both countries is already in practice. In brief, since my classmates will be discussing to you more about the Apostille and the Apostille Convention, this apostille service is actually a certificate issued by the government of a country certifying the authenticity of a document signed or issued in that country. It is an official authentication of a document, therefore. And apostilles are used whenever public documents need to be produced abroad. If you have been told that you need an apostille, your documents need this type of verification to be valid for use in another country. An apostille only authenticates the origin of the underlying public document. So once again, as the Philippines and the United States of America are both signatories to the Apostille Convention, what document must be brought to the Philippines need to be apostillized or apostillated or given an apostille certificate before it can be used in the Philippines. Here are some examples or queries as an overseas Filipino. How will the Apostille Convention affect me as an OFW? Just as Philippine documents for use in apostille countries will no longer need to pass through another authentication by the foreign embassies in Manila after they have been authenticated or apostillized by the DFA OCA, foreign documents from apostille countries will only need apostillization by the host government for them to be validly used in the Philippines or another apostille country. So again, if you are an OFW and you are located in the United States of America and you wanted to send legalized documents from the US to the Philippines, you need to have it apostillized because both US and the Philippines are signatories to the Apostille Convention. Another scenario is when you still want your document executed in an apostille country to be authenticated by the Philippine Embassy. What happens? Well, by May 14, 2019, the Philippine embassies and consulates no longer authenticate documents originating from apostille countries, such as, for example, if you're in America. Such documents will still need the apostille from the host government, America, but not the authentication by the Philippine embassy or consulate. Embassies in the consulates are not authorized to issue an apostille. However, Philippine embassies and consulates can or shall continue to provide acknowledgement and jurat services to walk-in applicants regardless of whether the origin of the document is in a apostille country or not. It boils down to the question, what if I'm an OFW? How do I get my legal documents authenticated in the absence of Philippine consulate office in my area? The answer to that is, in the absence of a Philippine Consulate office in your state, you proceed to the office of the Secretary of State or any competent authority provided for as the designated competent authorities of the Hague Conference of Private International Law. This is what led the Convention of October 5, 1961, abolishing the requirement of legalization for foreign public documents, or this is commonly known as the Hague Apostille Convention. The Office of the Secretary of State provides apostille and authentication service to U.S. citizens and foreign nationals on documents that will be used overseas. So if you have documents such as an SPA or a special power of attorney that you need authenticated, you will go to the Secretary of State or any competent authority, such as the State Attorney General, so that they can apostillate or issue an apostille certification to such document, making it legally valid and qualified to be sent to the Philippines and be used as a legal document.
Document authentication. Authentication is a generic term that commonly refers to the process of verifying the origin of a public document by certifying the authenticity of the signature and legal authority of the public official who signed it. It does not, however, certify the content of the public document to which it relates. Now, what is the purpose of document authentication? The purpose of document authentication is to certify. So as mentioned earlier, it certifies the validity of the signature on a legal document, the authority of the signature on a document, and identify the stamp or seal on said document. Who benefits from authentication? Anyone traveling or moving to another country. Examples may be individuals or families relocating due to a job, corporations opening new branches or offices in other countries, teachers who will be teaching in foreign countries, and individuals who need to present issued documents to government authorities in another country. These are just some of the examples of those people who will be benefited from authentication. Now, what are the types of documents that can be authenticated? The types of documents that need certification will vary depending upon the embassy requirements of the host country. Common examples of documents that require authentication or apostille include birth, marriage and divorce certificates, background checks, educational documents, incorporation or operational documents for corporations, personal or corporate legal documents. Why do some documents need an apostille certification and others need authentication? A document may require an apostille or authentication certification depending on the country in which it needs to be submitted. Most countries in the world are divided into two categories. First, countries which are signatories to the Hague Convention will require the apostille seal, which this will be discussed in detail by our next reporter. Also, countries which are not part of the Hague Convention require documents to follow the authentication process. Now let's discuss the authentication process. Now we need to ask first this question. Is country where document will be used is part of Hague Convention? If our answer is yes, then we'll be needing the apostille certification. But if our answer is no, then let's proceed to the authentication process. In those cases where apostille is not an option, business documents must be authenticated. So authentication usually begins with the relevant party signing a document and having it notarized. Then, the county or state officials will examine the notary acknowledgement. So for example, in the US, the US Department of State will certify the said document. Once a document is authenticated, it must be certified by the foreign jurisdiction to be valid there. And this process is called the legalization. Usually, it occurs at the country's embassy or consulate and can be considered the final step in the authentication process. Before you submit documents for authentication and legalization, we need to get familiar with the jurisdiction requirements. We need to keep in mind that each embassy or consulate has its own rules and hours of operation, and most require certification requests to be accompanied by specific documentation. Civic and religious observances can affect transaction handling speed. Each country also has its own standards of proof. Legalization and authentication process can be very time consuming. In order for us to increase the chance of success, they need to be sure to do the following. We need to know what are the fees that are involved. We need to know what are the forms of payments that the said office accept. Will courier services be required? At what cost? What are the expected turnaround times? We need to have the right information. Now let's proceed to these frequently asked questions in order for us to really understand what is authentication is all about and the other related issues concerning the authentication process. First question, what will I do if the country where I need to use my public document is not an apostille country? If your public document is to be used in a country where the apostille convention does not apply, then you should contact the embassy or the consulate of the country where you intend to use the document in order to find out what your options are. This usually means that you need to present your documents to the said country's embassy or consulate in the Philippines for its authentication or legalization. You may also ask the intended recipient of your document whether an apostille is necessary in your particular case. What if my document was issued from another country and will be used in the Philippines? Documents originating from another country are considered as foreign documents. There are two types of foreign documents. First, a certificate of authentication, certificate of acknowledgement, jurat, and other documents issued by Philippine embassies or consulates, and documents issued by foreign embassies or consulates in the Philippines. Foreign documents cannot undergo authentication since this process is only applicable to Philippine public documents for use abroad. If foreign documents will only be submitted to local offices in the Philippines, documents will be submitted at the DFA Asiana for certification. If the foreign document is apostillized by another country, then it shall be submitted directly to the local office without the need to further authentication or certification by the DFA or Philippine embassies or consulates. What if my document was issued from another country and will be used to another country? We need to coordinate with the concerned foreign embassy or the consulate, since the Philippines is not the issuing authority nor the recipient of the said document. The DFA apostille or certification is not applicable. Now let's proceed. What is a consularized SPA? A consularized SPA is simply a special power of authority which will be signed abroad. The consularized SPA is for OFWs who wish to assign a representative back in the Philippines but is unable to come home due to various reasons. The consularized SPA will be executed at the Philippine Embassy of the country where the said OFW is currently residing. A consularized SPA can be used to assign someone to fulfill legal transactions on his or her behalf. Now, what are the requirements to get a consularized SPA? To get a consularized SPA, the following requirements must be supplied. First, a photocopy of the first and last page of your Philippine passport. Valid Philippine issued government ID only if the passport is not available, although some may require both the ID and the passport. Next is personal appearance. This is very important. And two witnesses, and this should be of legal age and also personally appear with you in the embassy during the execution of the said SPA. valid IDs of the witnesses, and notarial fee. And said this will vary per country. Next, how to get a consularized SPA. First, you need to visit the nearest embassy's website and go to the Consular Services section and download the Special Power of Authority form and fill out the details. Together with your two witnesses, then you need to go to the Philippine Embassy near you. Then present the duly filled out SPA and sign the document at the embassy. If everything goes well and there are no issues or missing documents, then you'll be asked to pay the consularization fee plus an additional fee for the courier services. And it usually takes around 3 business days in average to process the document. So once a document has been released, then you can send it back to your family in the Philippines and use it for its intended purpose. Do I still need to secure a consularized SPA if I already executed a special power of attorney while I was still in the Philippines? Generally, the old SPA with no expiration date is still valid, provided that the modes of extinguishing the agency are not present. However, in actual practice, the latest SPA is required to ensure that the agent still has the mandate and the information of the buyer is still current. For example, the civil status has changed from being single to married. Buying and selling real property through an agent is a risky transaction, so hence the parties are required to conduct due diligence. Requiring the latest SPA is part of the due diligence. How can I verify the validity or authenticity of a special power of attorney? You may verify the validity or authenticity of the SPA by checking with the notary public who notarized the document. So before notarizing the SPA, the notary public has ascertained that the owner or the principal personally appeared before him and presented the SPA for notarization. And also the person who signed the document is indeed the owner, through the showing of competent evidence of identity such as those IDs that are required. And the principal voluntarily affixed his signature to the document. Notary publics are required to keep and maintain a notarial register, so they are also mandated to furnish a copy of all documents acknowledged before him to the clerk of court. The special power of attorney was authenticated with a red ribbon. Is it still valid or do I need to have it apostillized? Documents with red ribbon are still valid and you may still use the same, provided that the subject document and the red ribbon are still within their validity period. The issuing of the apostille certificate did not invalidate the previous process of authenticating a document by affixing a red satin ribbon. It only replaces it. Hence, there is no need to have the SP apostillized again as it will be redundant. I'm executing a special power of attorney abroad for my representative in the Philippines. Do I need to send the original SPA to my representatives or will a digital copy sent via fax or email will suffice? It depends on the entity requiring the SPA. But best to check with the entity requiring the SPA if it allows a digital copy. Generally, the entity will require an original copy of the SPA to validate the authenticity of the document and, of course, the signatories. This is most critical in transactions involving the transfer of rights, such as the to sell real properties. That would be all. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Dean. Good evening, classmates. So to continue the report, I will talk about an apostille. So what is an apostille? An apostille is a certificate that authenticates the origin of a public document. It is issued by a country that is party to the apostille convention to be used in another country which is also a party to the convention. So on May 14, 2019, the Philippines officially became a party to the Apostille Convention. The authentication is still required for all Philippine documents to be used abroad, but this time with an apostille instead of authentication certificate or what we call the red ribbon as proof of authentication. So when do I need one? So after authentication or apostillization with the Department of Foreign Affairs, Office of Consular Affairs, as competent authority, there is no more need for authentication or legalization by the foreign embassies or consulates, except for countries that have not acceded to the convention and countries that objected to the Philippine accession. So what is the benefit of an apostille? We know that working abroad follows numerous steps and processes to ensure that as an overseas Filipino worker, you are protected even outside the boundaries of the Philippines, and one of which is obtaining an apostille. The apostille streamlines the whole authentication procedure of documents for use abroad, resulting to more convenience, less cost, and processing time for the applicants. This will not only make certification easier, but this helps in further strengthening relationships with other countries as part of the Apostille Convention. So how is it different from the authentication certificate or what we call the red ribbon? So before apostille, a Philippine document to be used abroad needs a certification by the relevant government agency or office, authentication by the DFA, and authentication or legalization by the embassy of the country of destination. So now, with the apostille, the aforementioned document will no longer require legalization by the foreign embassy if the country of destination is already a member of the Apostille Convention or an apostille country. Once apostillized, the document can be validly used in any and all apostille countries. So, this is a red ribbon. This is the cover page of a consularized red ribbon. So, let me read its contents. The Embassy of the Republic of the Philippines, Riyadh. Acknowledgement. So before me, Vice Consul in and for the Philippine Embassy, Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, duly commissioned and qualified to administer oaths on this date personally appeared, who represented to me to be the same person who executed the annex instrument and acknowledged before me that he, she, they executed the same out of his or her their own free will and deed. The said party signed at the foot of the instrument. This document, together with this acknowledgement, is composed of state the pages. And for the contents of the attached documents, the Philippine Embassy assumes no responsibility. In witness whereof, I have her unto set my hand on these presents and affix her to the seal of the Philippine Embassy, Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, this date. So, the signature of the Vice Consul. Next, this is an apostille issued abroad. Let me read its content. State of Illinois, Secretary of State, country destination, Philippines. Apostille, country, United States of America. This public document has been signed by the name, acting in the capacity of Notary Public, Cook County, bears the seal or stamp of the State of Illinois, certified at Chicago by the Secretary of State, the number, and then the seal or the stamp, and then the signature of the Secretary of State. So there is a note here. This apostille only certifies the signature and the seal or stamp it bears. It does not certify content of the document for which it was issued. this apostille is not valid within the United States of America. So, sa abroad lang din siya. Hindi siya pwede sa ilahang country. Another, this is an individual acknowledgement signed by the notary public. Another, this is an apostille issued in the Philippines. So as you can see, the same content, Department of Foreign Affairs, Kagawaran ng Ugnayang Panlabas, apostille, country Philippines, has been signed by the name, acting in the capacity of, bears the seal or stamp of, certified at Manila, the date, with the name, number, the seal or the stamp, and the signature of the authentication officer. So now, in which countries does the Apostille Convention apply? So the Apostille Convention only applies if both the country where the public document was issued and the country where the public document is to be used are parties to the convention. Aside from countries that have not yet acceded to the Apostille Convention, the Philippine Apostille will not apply to Austria, Finland, Germany, and Greece. So documents from two such countries will still require legalization by the concerned embassy or consulate. So these are the 113 countries where apostille applies. The Albania, Belize, Costa Rica, France, Italy, Japan, Cyprus, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Hungary, Iceland, India, Ireland, Israel, Peru, Poland, and among others. But let me wait. Let me show to you this is the website for the Hague Apostille Convention. As you can see here, there is the Philippines. So this 12/9/2018 means that this is the date of the accession of the Philippines, and this A means accession. Other, like Portugal, R means that it is true ratification. The Philippines is true accession. So what does accession means? It is only a formal agreement and is not preceded by signing, while ratification, it is a formal agreement which is preceded by signing. So basically, the process of signing is the key difference between accession and ratification. So this date here, this is the entry into force of the Apostille Convention on May 14, 2019. So we can see here why those 4 countries apostille will not apply. So first is the Federal Republic of Germany. The reason is its objection to the accession of the Philippines in accordance with Article 12, Paragraph 2 of the Convention, abolishing the requirements of legalization for foreign documents. On October 5, 1961 in Hague. Second is Finland. Pursuant to Article 12, second paragraph of that convention, Finland hereby raises an objection to the accession of the Republic of the Philippines. And third, the Republic of Austria raises an objection to the accession of the Republic of the Philippines with reference to Article 12, Paragraph 2 of the Convention. And lastly, in accordance with Article 12, Paragraph 2 of the Hague Convention, abolishing the requirement of legalization for foreign public documents of the October 5, 1961, the government of the Hellenic Republic hereby objects to the accession of the Republic of the Philippines to the above-mentioned convention. So that is the reason. So next, what do I do if the country where I need to use my public document is not an apostille country. So if your public document is to be used in a country where the apostille convention does not apply, you should contact the embassy or consulate of the country where you intend to use the document in order to find out what your options are. This usually means that you need to present your documents to the said country's embassy or consulate in the Philippines for its authentication or legalization. So, to which documents does the Apostille Convention apply? So, in the Philippines, the Philippine Apostille will apply the same types of documents that are subject to authentication by the DFA prior to the effectivity of the Apostille Convention in the Philippines. But in the United States of America, the following documents are being submitted to the Secretary of the State to be apostilled. These are the diplomas, transcripts, power of attorney, commercial agreements, birth certificate, and marriage certificate. So now, how to apostille a document in the Philippines? So apostillizing Philippine document typically involves 3 steps. Step 1, a fee for validation of each document. The fee is 100 pesos per document. A document can be more than 1 page. Step 2, duly fill out the Certificate of Authentication request form that includes the following information. First, the name of requesting country, the contact details, address as to where the document should be mailed, and for documents considered minor, indicate the name of the individual requesting the documents. Step 3. You can avail the apostille in the following branches. This is in the Philippines. First, DFA Asiana, DFA NCR Northeast, DFA NCR East, DFA NCR West, DFA NCR South and Metro Gaisano Alabang, DFA San Fernando, DFA Pampanga, DFA Davao, and DFA Cebu. So how much is an apostille? So for now, payment for the DFA OCAS authentication service is the same. It's still 100 pesos for regular processing. Example, the release after 4 working days, and 200 pesos for expedited processing to be released the following business day. So, if I am an overseas Filipino, how will the Apostille Convention affect me? So just as Philippine documents for use in apostille countries will no longer need to pass through another authentication by the foreign embassies in Manila, also, foreign documents from apostille countries will only need apostillization by the host government for them to be validly used in the Philippines or in another apostille country. So how to apostille a document abroad? So this is the situation. A is currently in the United States of America. He wanted to buy a house and lot in the Philippines owned by B, so A appointed C as agent. The problem is that A is currently residing in the state of Illinois in the United States of America, which is far from the consular office. If I were A, what should I do? So, what A can do is through an apostille. First, he must notarize the document at the notary public in A's area. Second, once notarized, go or send the notary document to the Secretary of State and have it apostilled. And third, once apostilled, A can send directly the document, the original copy, to the Philippines without any authentication from the Philippine Embassy or Consulate. So what are the effects of an apostille? Just like the authentication certificate, or what we call the red ribbon, an apostille only certifies the origin of the public document to which it relates. It certifies the authenticity of the signature or seal of the person or authority that signed or sealed the public document and the capacity in which this was done. An apostille does not certify the content of the public document to which it relates. An apostille may never be used for the recognition of a document in the country where that document was issued. Apostilles are strictly for use of public documents abroad. So this note, we can see it at the lower portion of the apostille. That's what I showed you. Next, if the recipient of an apostille wants to verify my apostille, what should I suggest? So each apostille country is required to keep a register in which it records the date and number of every apostille it issues, as well as information relating to the person or authority that signed or sealed the underlying public document. Recipients may contact the competent authority identified on the apostille and ask whether the information on the apostille corresponds with the information in the register. So for your information, the contact information for the competent authorities, including phone numbers and website information, is available in the apostille section of the Hague Conference website. And issued Philippine apostilles may be verified through the DFA website. So,
good evening, Dean. Good evening, classmates. To continue with my presentation, I will be reporting on how to effectuate U.S. authenticated documents for use here in the Philippines. So as a recap from the earlier reports made, an apostille is a certificate that authenticates the origin of a public document to which it relates. So it certifies the authenticity of the signature or seal of the person or authority that signed or sealed the public document and the capacity in which this was done. For apostilles issued in the U.S. and other member countries, recipients may contact the competent authority identified on the apostille and ask whether the information in the apostille corresponds with the information in the register. Documents from non-apostille countries under the embassy's jurisdiction will still need the authentication from the host government and the authentication by the Philippine Embassy. So here is a flowchart to further illustrate what happens when a foreign document is to be used here in the Philippines. First, we have to identify if it is a public or business document or a private document, and then we check if this foreign document comes from an apostille country or a country which is a signatory of the Apostille Convention or not. But before we proceed with the flowchart though, let us cite examples of public or business documents and that of private documents. Business-related documents such as trademark, patent application, oath of corporate secretaries or offices, appointment of resident agents, affidavit of use or non-use, assignment of letters of patent must be apostillized by the designated authorities. Reference is made to the directory on the designated authorities under the jurisdiction of the embassy. Government-issued documents such as birth certificate, death certificate, marriage certificate, divorce decree, and those issued by private institutions such as transcript of records, medical records, licenses, certificates of training, and private documents such as special power of attorney, affidavit, certification, deed of donation, deed of sale, extrajudicial settlement of estate must be apostillized by the designated authorities. Again, reference is made to the directory on the designated authorities under the jurisdiction of the embassy. So here on the screen are examples of authentication officers who are designated to apostilize private or public documents in the U.S. So back to the flow chart, let us start on the outermost part of the illustration under apostillization. So foreign documents to be used in the Philippines under public, business document, or private documents. Documents coming from apostille countries or countries who are signatories to the Apostille Convention. They only have to go through the apostillization process before they would be accepted for use here in the Philippines. Same goes with a private document coming from apostille countries. Once they are notarized by their public notary or notary public, it will go through the process of apostillization before it will be accepted for use in the Philippines. For documents, both public and private, not coming from apostille countries, there is a different process for this. So, for example, public or business documents coming from non-apostille countries, they will still have to be authenticated by the appropriate agency in the host country, and then further authenticated by the embassy before it is accepted for use in the Philippines. The same for private documents coming from non-apostille countries. They will have to be notarized before authenticated by appropriate agency of the host country for further authentication by the embassy before it can be accepted for use in the Philippines. To give you a closer look on how private documents coming from non-apostille countries go through the process of apostillization, here are some of the few steps. So a covering letter must be prepared. It may be handwritten or typed, addressed to the consular section, indicating service or transaction requested, and complete contact details such as telephone number, postal address, and email address. No document shall be processed without the complete contact information. The documents will then be notarized by a notary public, and signature of the notary public must be authenticated by the appropriate government offices where the notary public is registered. Original and one photocopy of document and all enclosures, including the payments, will be sent also. So going back to the sample case, Rochelle is pursuing a master's degree in the US and has a parcel of land in the Philippines located in Cagayan de Oro City. After deciding to sell her property, she instructed her friend and agent Jackie to sell the parcel of land, giving her 5% of the proceeds of the sale as commission. To effectuate the sale, Rochelle, who is currently in the US, must issue a special power of attorney. So applying the case of Rochelle in our illustration or flowchart, so she has a special power of attorney, which is considered as a foreign document to be used in the Philippines. It is a private document coming from an apostille country, and it has to be notarized first before it goes through the apostillization process and then thereafter accepted for use in the Philippines. So that ends my report on how to effectuate US authenticated documents for use in the Philippines and our presentation as a whole on how to notarize public documents abroad. Thank you for listening.